Hello everyone, welcome to this presentation about Mistika Boutique. In this quick presentation, we're going to make a grading from the scratch. But instead of make the grading using the traditional tools or the traditional approach that we probably all of us use for any kind of project, I'm going to use like different tools in different ways in a more free way compared with a proper workflow, just to show you how to combine all the tools that we have in Mistika for make a grading. Mistika Boutique gives you quite a lot of flexibility thanks to the new redesigned color grading toolset in Mistika 10. So let's see some of those tools and how they can improve your color workflow for any kind of project, films, commercial, VR projects, whatever you want. Right. So in this particular case, the first thing we need to know is what kind of project I'm doing. As I said, in this particular case, we're using some shots that are part of a sports commercial. So when I imagine a sports commercial, in my mind, I imagine some kind of cold, dramatic, contrast look. Maybe some people call it like a cinematic look. In my opinion, is more like a more dramatic, cold look. All right. So considering this kind of look, what is more important for me when I want to achieve this kind of aspect, this kind of look for my shot, is in this particular case the luminance. Sometimes luminance and chrominance have the same impact. Sometimes luminance is more important than chrominance, and sometimes chrominance is probably the most important thing. So in this particular case, I think luminance is the most important aspects for my project. I have some shots in here that I'm going to use as an examples for explaining these tools. I'm not going to consider these shots as a whole project. So instead of talking about how to manage those gradients between shots, etc., I'm going to focus on those shots individually to show different tools that you have available in Mistika Boutique for your grading. All right. So as I said, what I want to do with this project is to focus more on luminance, right? So the first thing I need to do is to contrast my image. I've opened here a couple of scopes that I can just put and place anywhere, which is really cool to just organize my GUI or my space for work in the way that I want. So I have here an RGB overlap scope open and the vector scope, which are basically my two basic scopes that I use for grading. All right. So once I have my GUI organized, I'm going to start working with this. I'm going to start with vector one. If for making a contrast, probably the most or the faster approach is just use leave gamma gain, like you normally would use, or all of us would use in any kind of project. But in this particular case, as I said, I'm going to use a different approach. So I'm going to start using a blending mode. The great thing of the blending modes is that automatically it gives me some contrast and some specific look for my shot. So for example, here, if I apply the soft light, I get the image automatically contrasted, which is really nice as a starting point. All right. So once I have that, I'm going to create another vector and I'm going to start working my shot from there. All right. So I want to contrast this shot a little bit more because, as you can see, the signal is a little bit compressed in the middle here. So I'm going to try to decompress it and get more information about the light. Of course, I can use the leaf and the gain, the gamma, as we normally do, as I said, but I want to focus more on the light of my shot. And the problem when you control the primary controls in here, because they work in RGB, I'm affecting not only the luminance, but the chrominance as well. And sometimes this kind of approach can be a little bit distracted, because if I want to focus on luminance, I want to keep the chrominance intact. Okay, so I have several ways to do it. Instead of using the primary, I can go to bands, and in bands we have a really nice tool that allows me to control luminance, hue and saturation in a separated way. So that's the main difference between primary and bands. Bands works in hue, saturation, and luma, and primary works at RGB, like any normal primary control in any grading solution, right? So I can use the bands for that work, but it's much better if I consider all these tool sets, primary, bands, fixed vectors, even curves if I want, if I have the capability of using all those tools in luminance without affecting the chrominance, and I can do that. So instead of limiting my range of actions to only bands, which is the only tool that has inbuilt control of the luminance by separated, I can just use these controls in here to select where I want to work in this vector. So instead of working at RGB, what I'm going to do is selecting the luminance control to just affecting the luminance. So now all the tools that I have in this vector, primary, bands, fixed vectors, curves, etc., will work on the luminance aspect of my shot without affecting the chrominance of the clip. All right. So once I have it, I can start working by controlling the leaf. And again, and as you can see, the vector scope is not moving because I'm just affecting the luminance of my range of my shot. Sorry. So is pretty nice. I'm not going to focus so much on those areas that goes below 0 or beyond 1000 because I can just recover that signal later. For now, I'm going to focus on the overall contrast of my image. I can use even the internal part of the trackball to control the density of the light without affecting the chrominance again. And I can even enable these modes, which is the level or the contrast, to control, for example, the lift and the gain trackball at the same time. This is the offset, or contrast with work in the opposite direction, which is really nice to control the density of your light in a really free and flexible way. All right. So once I have, for example, my luminance set, let's move to bands just to control a little bit of those shadows. So I'm going to move those shadows a little bit lower, right, and just bring those highlights a bit higher. There you go. Now I want to control and recover those areas that are basically clipping in my shots. For the highlights, I can use this same vector because I have a soft clip controlling here and the pivots area here. I'm going to use these pivots for recovering those parts of the signal. So basically I have the soft clip pivot here that I can put up. And with this pivot, I'm just selecting those areas that are going beyond the 1000 levels. So I can just recover them, making a soft clip in a really nice and fast way. I'm not affecting, as you can see, any part of the range, just the area that I selected between these two pivots, the soft clip and the pure white pivot. All right. For the shadows, I'm going to do a similar approach, but combining with another different tool. So I'm going to create another layer. And in this layer, what I'm going to do is to select the range that I want to work to recover those shadows. So I'm going to decrease the soft clip pivot here, decrease as well the white, and enable the knee soft here. And the great thing about the knee soft is that automatically change the behavior of the trackball here. So basically it will fix the position of the curve beyond this pivot there. And I will only work in this area here, which is the shadow area, keeping the rest of my shot intact. So I can just control the lift. As you can see, I'm just controlling that part without affecting anything else, which is really, really cool. And I can just recover all those details that were lost because of the luminance adjustment that I did in the secondary layer. All right. I can change the transition between these two areas with the knees of control, which is basically work like a roll-off between these two areas to create a more softer transition between the shadows and the midtones and the highlights. All right. So now my signal has been recovered. Now I can just focus on the grading. All right. I can just focus about the chrominance, sorry, of my shot. So I can just create another layer. And again, here I have different approach to control the chrominance. As I said at the beginning, when I imagine these kind of shots, I always imagine the look in the colder area of the spectrum. And right now is basically in the green, yellow area. I don't want that kind of color there. I prefer a bluish approach. So we have again several ways to do it. Using the lift in the game, I really like to use the offset control to just move the whole look on this whole chrominance of my shot to the color that I want. It can be a bit strong because at the end I'm working with the RGB channels directly, so it can affect as well my luminance a little bit. So maybe I can combine these controls with a little bit of bands in which I have more control only of the hue without affecting the luminance. So for example, here in the highlights, I can just move them to a more bluish approach. There you go. So now I have like a more dramatic look if we compare the original look of the shot with the color graded shot. I always like to use as well the curves in here, so I'm going to increase the size, decrease it a little bit so I can see my image, and maybe create a simple S curve just to increase a little bit that contrast there. There we go. All right, so now I have a small S curve in here to control that contrast there as well, if I wanted. All right, so I think that's a good approach for luminance in combination with chrominance. I'm now going to copy this color grade in the next shot by just double clicking. So now I apply the same color grading here. I'm going to see how the shot is moving, just to see if I have some values below the 1000 level. It's working really well. Now I want to create some focus area here in the hand. So I'm going to create like a shaping here and try to add some shadows in the area that is outside the shape and keep the light in there. So I will keep the attention of the viewer in this area here instead of this corner or in the right of the clip. So I'm going to create another layer. I'm going to create a quick shape in here. Just decrease the softness. There you go. Increase it in there. There you go. And now I'm going to work in the external part. Maybe I want to make it bigger. Let me make it bigger, something like that. There you go. So now I can just see which area I'm selecting. So I can just switch from the inside to the outside. There you go. And now here I can just control that part. Instead of using probably the gain, which is going to create this kind of shadows and change the saturation here, I'm just going to use bands as well to decrease those values, just to create a little bit of shadows here in there. Not so much. I will recover later. Okay. Those shadows with the primary control in here. I can just recover them back. Maybe create a new one just to and again recover those shadows that I have in here. So I don't have a clip in that area. So again, enable the knee soft and just recover them back. All I want is just to create some shadow in here, right? So in that way, the focus of the shot is just here in the hands. All right. As I see, it's looking a bit magenta, so we can just go to my grading with my chrominance layer. Just go to bands maybe and just move it more to the bluish, and same thing here, something like that. So now it looks more even, maybe more to the yellow there. Yeah, it's starting to look similar, all right? As I said, I'm going to focus only in the shots in an individual way, so we don't work too much in between the transition of the shots. It's just to show you how to make the grading with different tools in Mistika Boutique. All right, so let's apply it to the next shot, the same one, just to have like a similar approach. Okay, there you go. Well, this looks nice as a starting point. I'm going to recover some of those shadows by going to my lift controlling here, just to recover them back late in the lift. Go to my vector 2, change, there you go. So I want to keep all those shadows in there and just increase maybe the highlights to contrast a little bit more the skin of the runner here, right? Now, for these shots, because I have these red colors in the background, I want to increase a little bit the saturation, probably not move the shot too much to the colder area. So I'm going to basically reset this vector, and I'm going to start working with it. Just move to the blue and to the blue in here, but not so much. There we go, something like that. And to recover that kind of red colors here, what I can do is just go to the fix vector and just increase the saturation of the red color. And this tool is fantastic because it allows me to control hue, saturation, and luma of RGB and CMY in a separated way. As you have seen, I haven't created any key or any selection in my qualifier. I'm just using pivots and specific tools for specific colors, for specific channels to control the overall result of my shot, which at the end is a much faster approach than just making selections with a key or mask every time. So we have just created a mask in here to focus more the attention in the hands, but we are not creating keys for making this kind of adjustment, because Mistika is smart enough to offer you tools that specifically address these kind of problems or these kind of controls. All right. So with this small adjustment, we have basically changed in a dramatic way the overall look of my shot. Let's move to the next one. I'm going to double click. There we go. And again, the thing is here is, well, light is a bit high, so I'm going to decrease it by going to my controlling here, just recover them there, change the gamma and the lift. There you go. Maybe not decrease the soft light, the soft peak too much, because we have some values there. And now I'm going to increase a little bit the saturation. Not here, sorry, because this is the luminance control. There you go. And maybe again with the fixed vector here, I can just increase a little bit more the red, or I can just use it to match it. So for example, here, move it down. There we go. So now I can match those colors in there. So as you can see, these controls allows me to change the overall look of the shot in a really quick way. All right. So now let's jump to the next shot, which is this one. And I'm going to do the same thing that I've done with the rest of the shots. I'm going just to copy the first one that I'm using as a reference, even if they don't look the same, but just to have the same layer structure. So double click, and there we go. This is the overall look. I'm going to reset my chrominance layer and maybe work with the light layer just to give a little bit, to have a little bit of more shadows and increase the values of those highlights. There we go, something like that. This shot is particularly interesting because all those sands particles that we have in here that I want to contrast with the background. So I'm going to control the color, the overall color, to get this kind of contrast between the particles and the backgrounds there. Right now it's the moment to control the chrominance. So we have used primary controls for the chrominance. We have used bands control, just as summarizing what we have said in the other shots. In primary, you have the traditional RGB controls, but combined with offset and contrast tools that works directly with the trackball. So you don't apply in a duplicated way controls. You don't have a specific contrast control, because at the end you can control that contrast directly from the trackball. With the bands, you can have a hue, saturation, and luma control in different ways. And with fixed vector, you can control the hue, saturation, and luma of RGB and CMY channels. Now, with Mistika 10.1, we have included new ways to control the fixed vector here that combines these tools. So for example, if we go to the hexagon here in this small bottle there, basically we have a hue saturation control combined in this hexagon and a luminance control in this secondary hexagon. So for example, if I want to move these green colors to the bluish area of the spectrum, I can just take this green and just drag it to the bluish. And as you can see, I can increase the value. There we go. With a really small change, I can just change again the overall look of my shot. And this tool is really nice because basically it allows me to change in a really clean way, because the fixed vectors are amazingly clean, the overall look of my clip. So I'm going to drag this here, maybe the yellowish as well. So I want to create this kind of green to move it to a more bluish look again. All right. I can even increase or decrease the luminance. Don't worry about the limit of the graphic here, because in Mistika the range of the controls is huge. So even if the graphic is telling you that, hey, this slider finish here is not really true, you can just drag and increase the luminance value in there or decrease in the other way around. So basically you have full control of your range in there. So it's I think it's a really nice approach for controlling this kind of tools. Now let's go to the clothes here of the girl. So I'm going to take the red color there, just move them maybe to a more magenta approach, something like that. So with just controlling a couple of points of the hexagon here and here, I'm just changing the overall look of my shot in a really quick and nice way, creating that kind of contrast that I want between the background and the particle here of the sands. So as you can see, in Mistika, you have quite a lot of tools that you can combine in any way. This has been only a quick overview of those tools. We have much more that we haven't explained, like the temperature and tint, or using the different curves. We use only the curve to create an S-curve, a basic S-curve here. But again, you can use the traditional RGB curves with the saturation against saturation, luma against saturation, all the hue curves, and you can combine all those tools per vector. The great thing of this approach is all those tools works in parallel. So as we have done in the vector 2, when we enable the luminance control, all those tools will work only on luminance. So it's not that you are restricted to the tool, like the bands, for example, that is capable of working directly in luminance. You can transform the behavior of all those tools in the way that you want, giving you a huge flexibility for any kind of grading project.